Welcome, baseball fans. It is time once again for the Running the Bases podcast. I'm Tucker Wells, joined as always by Coach Jordan Bounds. Coach, how are you, good sir?
Pretty good for a rainy Tuesday.
Yeah, it is a little dreary outside, but full squads are now at spring training, so it just gets more and more bountiful each day. We are doing our first podcast for the YouTube channel, so welcome to the video internet, Coach.
I don't know if I want to be here.
Well, do our best to protect you while we are. So leading off, the Atlanta Braves have signed a certain ball player to a minor league contract. That ball player is none other than Jeff Francoeur. How excited are you to have Frenchie back in a Braves uniform?
I'm not real excited. I mean, I don't really have anything against him. I think it's the Braves are throwing him a courtesy. They're giving him a place to exhibit himself. I don't see any chance of him making the Braves.
Yeah,
I don't mean that as a negative, but he might be a better ball player than a couple of the guys that have guaranteed contracts that are going to be on the team.
Yeah, well, he is stepping into a rather crowded outfield situation to try and. I think we're going to have the first 7-man outfield and then a 12-man pitching staff. Frank.
And all we've signed every middle infielder in the world.
Right. Yeah. It'll be a very interesting spring training, to say the least. But with Francoeur, though, he was such the face of the baby Braves. Would you say that, or was it more McCann?
Well, his first couple of months, it was him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, it certainly became McCann.
Yeah, but the pride of Parkview and my long lost brother, if you can't tell, Francoeur and I were separated at birth. So,
yes, right.
So I'll be happy to see him back home again. Although I think he still lives here.
I think so too.
Yeah,
he might live in Kansas City. I don't know.
Yeah, but do you think it's just? I mean, he just lost it, or just couldn't?
Oh, I think he was stubborn. I think he didn't ever adjust. He didn't make the adjustments that he needed to make. He kept trying to jerk everything.
Yeah, never saw a pitch he didn't like.
Right. I mean, and tried to pull everything. Swung too hard.
Yeah, and that was that football mentality, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so
he was a very good outfielder, an exceptionally good outfielder.
Oh yeah, and what a great swing, just beautiful looking swing. Just too bad it didn't connect enough. I thought it was. I thought it was very nice. All right, so now going into the majors, the Baltimore Orioles have indeed signed Yovani Gallardo, although it seems...
Easy for you to say.
Although it seems to be pending a question about his physical, but assuming that all clears, 3 years, $36 million, how do you feel about that deal for the Orioles?
I still don't see the Orioles ready to compete in that division.
Well, now, there really isn't great pitching anywhere in that division.
Red Sox got some pretty good pitchers.
They've got one exceptional pitcher, and then...
They got a pretty good bullpen. And the Yankees have a very good bullpen.
But what do the Orioles also have? A pretty good bullpen.
Yes, that's true.
So, and
it's true. You're right. It is more of... I just still don't see the Orioles competing.
No?
Oh, I mean, I see them competing. Showalter will keep them there and keep them competitive, but I don't see them winning the division.
You think Showalter has the highest managerial WAR besides Madden? Just without looking it up.
Without looking it up, active in the game today?
Yeah.
There is. I don't know. I couldn't say that. I think it's really, to give a figure like that on a manager is really tough.
Yeah,
really
I mean,
tough.
we talked about this a lot last year going into last season about how much a manager really affects wins and losses, or the number directly affected. But
Showalter has worn out his welcome in certain places. It seems as though Baltimore is a very good fit for him.
Yeah.
But not there all the time. I can't say that for certain.
Yeah. Well, they appear to be also closing in on one Mr. Dexter Fowler, who really is going to want that to happen, I would think, since full squads are reporting right now. So if they get Dexter and do indeed sign Dexter Fowler, does it move the needle anymore for you on the Orioles?
A little bit more, yeah. The more ball players they have, the better they're going to be. You heard it here first. Yeah.
Breaking news. But chemistry-wise, too, I mean, the Red Sox, like we've said many times before, major chemistry issues, considering if Hanley Ramirez is indeed their starting first baseman. So, am I placing too much value on the chemistry and the good time vibe in the Baltimore clubhouse? And the culture that Buck creates?
Yeah, first of all, Buck creates a lot of that, I think. But I don't know that culture is more important. It may be more important in certain cities and in certain situations than it is in others. I think there is more of a psychological strain in certain markets. Your Bostons, your New York, Chicago's, where it may turn a team inward where there needs to be more chemistry than there would be in other places. And it might be totally opposite, and I might not know what I'm talking about. But
yeah, that happens from time to time.
Yeah.
You don't. But no, it's a good point. I mean, Baltimore is not Boston. It's not the Boston media, but DC can be vicious too. So I don't know. I think that the AL East is pretty wide open. It could be one of the more wide open divisions in the league, but we'll get to that, after we actually see some baseball. Mm-hmm. And then finally, Jose Bautista. Contract negotiations with him have taken an interesting turn. You told me about this. He gave them a Godfather offer.
Yeah, pretty much. And he might be able to get away with it because they may be in a situation, kind of a Joe Mauer situation, when the Twins had to sign Joe Mauer when he was way too old to a long contract, and he's not giving them a hometown discount either. He's getting paid. And went way beyond, kind of a Pujols kind of contract.
7 years and $180 million.
Yeah.
Considering where he was at, sure.
And but they kind of had to do it. Minnesota, as they're going into their new ballpark, they had to have the hometown. He was their face too much, and so. They had to do it. Just as we had to sign Maddox the one year where the Braves, he took their qualifying offer, which nobody figured he would. But
is it a qualifying, or I guess it was an arbitration?
I think it was a qualifying offer, and they didn't think he would accept it, and he did. They may have called it something different at that time, but regardless, I think Bautista may be in a position right now where Toronto has to sign him.
Yeah, well, 35 years old as of the recording of this podcast.
Right.
So, and I did not look at how many years he told them he wanted in said extensions.
I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah. But he's definitely not going to give them a hometown discount.
He
correct?
said he didn't believe in the hometown discounts.
Yeah. And really, Toronto is not his hometown. He's played for like 20 different teams.
Yeah, I know.
So.
And he remarks how he was underpaid there. And he was, what your fact of war. I mean, he was kind of a 5 WAR a year guy.
Yeah. So if this doesn't get settled before the start of the season, how much do you think it affects the Toronto team, the Toronto clubhouse?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the chemistry or anything in that clubhouse, but generally,
well, Bautista's a little bit of a hothead.
Yeah,
he likes to flip bats in a rather flippant way.
It is. I think he's going to get paid, and I think he is one of the more social media savvy ball players, and he's got that working for him in Toronto.
He follows us.
Yeah, there you go.
Jose Bautista, thank you for following Running the Bases. So.
I think he's going to get paid, but he'll, and if he doesn't, he's liable to be playing, like beast, just to show everybody that he can. He will be a free agent,
Yeah, that's true. He'll do a Cespedes perhaps. Yeah. All right. Anything else before we go first to third here?
I don't think so.
All right. So going first to third today, we are going to talk about cheaters. Dirty, awful cheaters. Or perhaps they're just really good at gamesmanship. For this debate, we are going to exclude the PED users. So with apologies to Mark McGuire, Barry Bonds, Rafael Palmeiro et al., this is not about the steroid users. We're talking about those who became famous or perhaps infamous for affecting the outcome of the game through the doctoring of balls and the corking of bats. So this is an age-old riddle, a debate in baseball. Is cheating within the lines craftsmanship or simply foul play? And the prime example that comes out that you and I both thought of and is near and dear to Braves fans would be Kent Herbeck. 1991 World Series, he pulls Ron Gant off the base. Gant is called out. World Series won by the narrowest of margins. Was that cheating or was that gamesmanship? Or let me take that back. Was that gamesmanship or foul play what Herbeck did?
I think it is, from a Brave standpoint, it looks just like bullying, pushing somebody off the base. And it did from the third base dugout.
Yeah.
The camera angle that we had. But if you look at it from the umpire's view, the umpire who is behind him, it does look like Gant's momentum takes him around the base. And that's craftsmanship. That is gamesmanship, if that's what Herbeck was doing. Is he forever a villain in our mind? Yes. And he was such a big guy too, that and he didn't have enough vowels in his name, and there was just all sorts of things that were wrong.
He was like him. Drago in Rocky IV.
There you go. Very similar name.
Just saying, if I got stuck next to him at the airport bar, I'm not buying him a drink.
There you go.
In fact, I'd probably move down to a more empty area.
And it happened to Ronnie too.
Yes, so. I know. One of my favorites. But gamesmanship, I mean, if replay is existing back then, does that call get reversed?
I think replay did exist back then.
Well,
you mean calling or having the decision?
Video review.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, which may bring up an odd: is the '85 Deckinger play? Is that cheating? Yeah. Was that just good craftsmanship or gamesmanship?
Yeah, there are a lot of them that you can say with that.
Yeah, and then for you say that the king and still champion is John McGraw.
Of all time, I mean, in terms of, he's the one that has more of the fabled stories, about him. I mean, and so much of it is because when he played, and I'm talking about when he played, not when he managed.
Right.
When he played, there was one umpire, and often his eyes are diverted. And McGraw was famous for, as a third baseman, holding people at third base when they were tagging up. I mean, turning around and holding his belt loops and stuff so the guy couldn't take off. He tripped people all the time. He is, in 1894, they're playing in Boston, and he goes over and starts a fight with the opposing third baseman. The fight goes into the stands erupt, a riot ensues, and 170 buildings in the neighborhood were destroyed. I don't know if that's dirty, but I know as a manager...
That's kind of like the middle of the Venn diagram is right. What that is.
Yeah, it is. I know that as a manager, he had to have police escorts on and off the field every place he played. He was so vilified.
Yeah. John Rocker, too. Anyway, moving right along. Yeah,
I thought we weren't going to mention PED users.
right, exactly. Or just idiots. But, the cheating in baseball, like you just said, is part of the lore of it. It's part of the mythos. And do you think that revisionist history, let me take that back.
Well, let me take over. As to what is craftsmanship, what is gamesmanship, and what is just plain dirty, is evident, I think. And you mentioned this earlier. We have pitchers that have doctored the ball, that have thrown spitballs and whatever, and then we have hitters that have corked bats. The fines are basically the same. It's usually a 10-game suspension. It's been that way forever. But the pitchers, if you look at the famous ones, the Preacher Rose, the Whitey Fords, the Don Suttons, and of course the greatest, Gaylord Perry. Even Lou Burdett's, and even the ones like Joe Niekro, who gets caught flipping the thing out of his pocket. There have been several that's happened to.
Although what Sutton did was even better.
Well, Sutton was searched all the time, and he used to hide notes in his uniform that dirty notes that the umpires would find, things that were
lots of words that we can't really say right here.
Well, we're assuming we know what those words are.
Right.
Sutton was suspended once for 10 games and then threatened a lawsuit or something, and somehow or another the suspension just went away because they couldn't prove it, or I guess.
Yeah, sure.
Whitey Ford was famously talked about how he he didn't doctor the ball so much as Elston Howard, his catcher, who would catch the ball and then as he's about to throw it back, scrape it on the ground next to him or on his shin shin guard, then throw it back.
That to me is true craftsmanship.
Yes,
that's gamesmanship.
Right.
There.
And
it's the hidden ball trick.
Right. He threw a mud ball. He talked about Whitey Ford was. Whitey Ford talked about it too. That I think in '63. I may be wrong about that, but he talked about how if players that were, during his time, if players were making as much money as they are today, and I'm not sure what year that was, that he would have continued to doctor balls all the time and play until he was 40.
Right. At the turn of the century, it was nothing but straight fastballs in the game of baseball. That was the lone pitch, the fastball and the changeup. And when the curveball was introduced, and I forget who the pioneer of the
Candy Cummings.
Yes, thank you. Wasn't it the president of Harvard who said that was cheating?
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so,
Or it might have been Yale, it's one or the other.
One of them, one of the Ivy League schools, but that the curveball was considered cheating at one point, and Gaylord Perry is in the Hall of Fame,
right?
So
is Whitey Ford. So is Don Sutton.
Yeah, I have one for you though that I think should have been reprimanded a little stronger. The putting, not just the scuffing of balls, because you could argue that a ball gets scuffed through the regular course of events in a game, right? But if you were to rub something, a substance on the ball, I think to Kenny Rogers in the 06 World Series that I'm amazed that he didn't get thrown out of that game. The foreign substance on his hand, and with HD television, you could see in that game too, where there were these really odd darkened areas of his hat that he kept touching very specifically. And I was at a sports bar in St. Louis, and everybody was screaming at the television about that. And of course, it was the only game the Tigers won in that World Series. So, to something like that, is that just foul play?
No. That's
putting
that's
a foreign substance on the ball that you can't find on the field.
That's what Gaylord Perry and Whitey Ford and Lou Burdett and Don Sutton and all of them have been doing forever. That's what I mean. They're prior to their doing away with the spitball rule. There were pitchers who that was their pitch.
Yeah.
Eddie Cicotti. From we're talking about cheaters. The great White Sox pitcher from 1919. He threw a spitball. That was his number one pitch.
Yeah. Let's see if we got any. So who is considered to be who's like the original ball doctor, if you will, trying to bring in the what is it? Nels Potter. How can I lead into Nels Potter better?
Yeah. Who was the first person suspended?
Yeah. So in the history of pitchers doctoring balls, who was the first to get caught?
Nels Potter. Well, I mean, he was the first suspended. Who was the first to get caught? I don't know. Probably on some Civil War battlefield, somebody yelled out, "Quit doing that to the ball!" I mean, it's been done forever. As soon as somebody realized, well, if I put this on there, so I mean, and it was probably from the beginning. So, but who was the first suspended was Nels Potter in 1944. Got a 10-game suspension, and it's going to remain that way forever.
Yeah. Do you think it's amazing that it's still 10 games?
No, I think it's just kind of lazy. And it's that way for all of these people that use cork bats as well. Yeah. I think the corking bats is probably a lot more prevalent than we're aware.
Yeah.
And today it's probably there may be transistors in bats. Who knows?
Yeah. Something that emits a little electrode right at the point of contact.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, we're not calling out the PED users who put the electrode inside of their muscles. Right. So, but in the area of cork bats, special props to Sammy Sosa for cheating on both ends of the spectrum. We will give special credit to that. Yeah. But when it comes to cork bats, you can't go without saying Norm Cash. That's the champion of getting away with it.
He said he used one during the whole 1961 season, and if that's the M&M boys year, but the CC boys, Cash and Colavito. And if you look at what Norm Cash hit 361 or something like that, I don't know. He had just an unbelievable season. He said that I used a cork bat the whole time, and then went on to, I think, show Sports Illustrated how to cork the bat.
Oh, good. Very informative. Kids, you can go look that up.
But there are people like Amos Otis talked about he used a cork bat his whole career. Talks about it after his career. And maybe the most famous one was Albert Bell's, where it was put into the umpire locker, and then another ball player crawls through the heating shafts and everything into the umpire's locker room and swaps the bats. And stuff. But then he still got suspended for 10 games.
Yeah, I think Mission Impossible had just come out or something. Must have.
My favorite one is Wilton Guerrero.
Wilton Guerrero. Tell us about Wilton Guerrero.
When his bat exploded, and instead of going onto the base or anything, he just starts diving on the ground and starts picking up all the pieces to his bat. Because
that's not suspicious at all.
No
one would think to look at what might have been in that bat.
No one would have thought Wilton Guerrero had a cork bat.
I take it he wasn't the greatest hitter of all time.
But you see, I mean, the hitters are instantly vilified.
True.
Whereas the pitchers, when you start watching Gaylord do all of this stuff where he's, doing these things all over his body, and he's like letting you know, I'm probably loading up right here, and you don't know which time. I mean, that we're looking at that and we're loving it.
Yeah. What do you think was the best place to hide the Vaseline or the pine tar mixture?
Well, I think it still remains hair.
Yeah.
Look at Clay Buchholz. Yeah.
Yeah. I always thought right under the cuff of the pant leg. Because you always look like, you can always see players adjusting their stirrups and
now I'd get suspicious.
Yeah.
Well.
I think special mentions got to be thrown when we're talking hitters to George Brett. I mean, he cheated. He had too much pine tar. And he made an iconic moment out of it. Is that not in the same specter as
the pine tar? There are all sorts of people that had pine tar all over their bats then. Brett wasn't the only one. It was not something that, just pine tar itself gave you an advantage, just like batting gloves do.
Sure. Yeah.
It wasn't making the ball jump off the bat any, when it hit it or anything. I mean, it's like a decorative rule.
Yeah. So and I forget why. I mean, the Yankees were just trying to get him on a technicality as it is. So
Billy Martin.
Yeah, there you go. It's a very Billy Martin thing to do. Now, an individual will get vilified, but I never knew this. The 51 Giants.
51 Giants
did it as a team. The greatest cheating team of all time, not fixing games.
Leo's club is 13 and a half games out in late August. They end up winning the pennant, catching the Dodgers in the last game of the year. Herman Franks was a coach then who would spend every game in the clubhouse, which was in center field, with his telescope looking at the catcher's signs. When he got the sign, he would, and picking up a catcher's signs, if you can see those, that's greatly to your advantage. And because they're easy to read. It's not like a third baseman's sign, third base coach's signs, which are they have indicators and all this sort of stuff. You understand the pitcher catcher signs real quickly.
You're looking at the dealer's hand in a game of blackjack. Yeah.
Right. And he then would either ring a bell or push a buzzer, let somebody in the bullpen know what the pitch was. This was signaled into the third base coach, who told the hitter. And this is not apocryphal. Everybody pretty much, there have been enough Giants to admit to this over the years. There are many people that think that Thompson knew what pitch was coming when he hits the shot heard around the world.
That the shot heard around the world was, he knew it was going around the world.
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. Hey, they deserve credit for creating such a Rune Goldberg machine.
You look at but even that, whereas we look at that as cheating, that seems, but if a coach on the field sees the catcher sticking his hands down too far, the fingers are below his thighs, and that coach is able to see those signs, is then telling the hitter what pitch is coming, indicating to the hitter what pitch it is that cheating? Right.
And what about grounds crew cutting grass a certain length depending on what team's coming to town?
The Bossard, or Bossard family, famous throughout the Midwest. Chicago, Cleveland, the greatest ground crews or groundkeepers of all time. They in Wrigley, or in the Cleveland, Emil Bossard used to move the removable fences in and out depending on what team was coming in. When the Yankees came in with all their power, they moved those fences way back.
That's awesome.
And it was legal.
I think we should bring that back and make it official. I think fences should be on a slider.
Bill Veeck wanted to do it according to the hitter that was up.
Yeah. Bill Veeck wanted to do a lot of things. So.
Right. The Bossard when in Cleveland, they used to freeze the balls, when they had, Feller and Garcia and Lemon and Wynn and all those pitchers. In Chicago, they used to, the grass, it was really both at Wrigley and at in Comiskey in those days, but the grass was so thick. And they had all these sinker ball pitchers like Tommy John and Gary Peters and stuff like that. Would just ground would just eat up the grounders. They would soak the field when Tommy John was going to pitch. It was like a swamp.
Yeah. And I think, that's incredible gamesmanship right there.
Yeah. And is that cheating? No. If I was playing a team, well, I don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should ask you that. What was the most gamesmanship thing that you got away with, both as a player and then a manager?
I don't even want to talk about it as a player. There was a year, and I had a great second baseman to do this with. I don't want to mention his name. He might be a lawyer now or something. But we had the base at second was broken, and the metal stop that goes into the socket was like cut in half. It was real unsturdy on the base, and it would often happen where you would slide into it and the base would come up, but it was still kind of shaky. And my second baseman, when we talked about it, he'd go over there with, there's a runner on second base, he'd like start to move the bag and like look at him like we'd get up, and the guy would get up and he'd tag him out.
And the ump would uphold that?
Sure.
I find that to be amazing, astounding even.
I'll say that the worst thing that I used to do, and I got caught on it, and sometimes I got away. I didn't get away with it as much as I tried it, I'll say that. But
sure.
I realized high school's different mentality, but there were times if I might have a runner at third that I had to get in. It's late in the game, and my batter is not. You can't hit water swinging from a boat, and the pitcher goes into a stretch, and then I just time and start walking across the umpire or the coaching box. The pitcher will stop. I'm an adult that just called time, and well, that's the bulk.
Yeah. Third baseman can't call time.
No, I mean as third base coach.
Yeah, third base coach can't call time.
That's correct.
That's exploiting the rule book. See, there's the other interesting wrinkle in this debate is that the rules of the game allowed for, like, John McGraw. John McGraw could never get away with those things in a 3-4 man umpiring crew. So playing to the loopholes in the game, if you will, you have a particular favorite, and I love this story of Mr. King Kelly.
King Kelly back in the 19th century.
This is the greatest use of cheating in gamesmanship, I think, I've ever heard of.
I got to retract, though, for a second to say it was wrong for me to enter in to influence the outcome of teenagers' lives by doing things that was gamesmanship on my part.
Well, you'll pay for it in the end.
Yes, I'm sure of that. But all right, King Kelly, it is a great story where he is on the bench at one day, and in those times to announce.
What era is this?
This is 19th century, 18. I think he's playing for the Chicago White Stockings. In those days, to make a change on the field, you would just have to yell to the press box, Kelly in for Chase and Kelly in for Miller. There was once a looping line drive. He's not on the field. He's in the dugout, and there's a looping line drive that's coming toward the dugout, and he just yells out, Kelly in for Miller, and catches the ball. He's out because he just put himself in the game. I think it's just he did things like this all the time. He was also, this was back in the day where with one umpire you'd have somebody cut across the infield, go from first to third.
It would be the equivalent in this day and age of a basketball player running off the bench and catching an alley-oop.
Right. It's almost Globetrotter-esque at times.
Yeah. Obviously, when you think of the word cheating, you can't help but think the 1919 Black Sox scandal. Fixing games, I mean, that's clearly just foul play. That's dirty play, as opposed to what we're describing as craftsmanship or gamesmanship. So when you think about cheating and you think about the 1919 White Sox, what are your thoughts about how that fits into the mythos and lore of baseball? Gamesmanship or cheating as it is.
If you've read the book 8 Men Out, you realize how much Comiskey has put a strain on these ball players. We know the way they were treated as chattel back in those days.
Sure.
And gambling was very prevalent. Hal Chase, who was a good ball player, he was first suspected, I think, of fixing games in 1910. In 1970, he was suspended by his own manager, Christy Mathewson, who, the Christian gentleman, nobody questions him, for fixing games. In 1918, one of his teammates accuses him of trying to bribe him. In 1919, he's suspended again for fixing games. In 1920, he's suspended from the Pacific Coast League for trying to bribe umpires. This is somebody, he's getting caught. This is the same time that the White Sox fix these games in the World Series. And we all know, or I guess we don't know, but I mean, maybe Joe Jackson didn't have anything to do with it. There's the fact that he and maybe Lefty Williams had their wives threatened and all this sort of stuff. It's an ugly thing. Buck Weaver does go to his grave saying he didn't have anything to do with it. It's a sad thing. Thankfully, baseball may have done something. I can't say they did something right by getting Kennesaw Landis, but by addressing that problem and correcting it, they may have saved the game, and then Babe Ruth may have to.
Yeah, Babe Ruth may have had something to do with that.
Right.
Possibly. He was pretty well known.
The very next year.
Yeah, how perfect the timing. And then, kind of finally, Pete Rose. This debate comes up every year. It just came up again recently about his reinstatement and all these different things. So where does Pete Rose fit into the history of cheating? Is he foul play completely for the fact that he bet on baseball while an active baseball player? And
yes, it is foul play that he did that. It is the unforgivable sin. Baseball, like all of America, always believes in second chances and third chances. And I don't know how many times Sparky Lyle was, or not Sparky Lyle. Oh, forgive me. Who was it? Who was that reliever, left-hander, pitched for both the Dodgers and the Yankees, who was caught doing cocaine several times?
I don't know. It's Steve Sachs comes to mind for me.
No, he's second baseman. He was a pitcher, relief pitcher. I think he was left-handed. But at any rate, we give second and third and fourth chances, and but you don't for gambling on the game. That's the one thing you don't.
Yeah.
Now, do I believe that? Does this vilify Pete Rose? Yes, it does. And his behavior, although somewhat philanthropic, his flaunting of baseball, setting up across from the Hall of Fame and selling, overpriced memorabilia and then bragging about it, that hasn't been. He's still a villain.
Steve Howe, by the way.
Steve Howe. That's
Steve
who
Howe.
It was. Yeah. But I don't think. I saw Pete Rose's whole career. I cannot believe that he ever fixed a game.
Right. Yeah. He played,
or that he didn't play less than his 100%.
Yeah, and that therein lies the rub about the 1919 White Sox, is that it was the fact they were throwing games as talented as they were, that in the guise of those who are fans of the game think it's so horrible.
But it went on like that from the very beginning. The 1877 Louisville club has the first four people that I think that were suspended from baseball for life. Jim Devlin was a pitcher, one of them. But that club they'd fixed so many games. That they just disbanded the very next year. They had this incredible record and then lose 10 in a row. Kind of once they've clinched everything.
Well, the 51 Giants story, like if Thompson really knew what pitch was coming, isn't that kind of the same as, I don't know, knowing at what point the fix is in or something?
Let me say one thing with that. It is not. There are every baseball team. You try to get the other team signs right away.
Right.
That's something and whether it's the catcher signs to the infield, as to how they're going to play a stolen base, or whether it's the third base coach's signs, or and if the catcher is bad enough where he's giving them away, sitting there with his leg open or something like that, you're going to take those. It's part of the game.
Part of the chess match.
Right, there there are a lot of hitters who don't want to know what pitch is coming. They start thinking about it too much, and I mean, you don't want to think too much when you're hitting. I mean, a lot of them. So I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. I mean, that Bobby Thompson knew. Maybe he was one of those who didn't want to know. But I mean, the indications. I mean, people have kind of indicated that he did know.
Yeah. So of all those, who was your favorite? Who was your personal favorite?
My personal favorite cheater.
Yeah. For the way that they pulled their games, because you admit to your own sins within the base pass.
There is a larceny in the heart that rings true with baseball craftsmanship. The image I still have of Wilton Guerrero scampering around on the field trying to pick up his bat. That's I think the image that I'll have is got to be of Gaylord.
Yeah.
For so long, just doing all of that stuff and just all over his body. And everybody's sitting there just glued to him. He's probably already loaded up. And he admitted that he'd go games where he wouldn't throw, but he'd go through all that stuff and people knew.
Yeah.
And there's an old story that if you go to his house in North Carolina, you can never get in because your hand just slides right off the handle each time you reach for the door.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's perfect. I mean, my favorite's still George Brett, even though it's not technically cheating. I know, it's too great. It's too great of a clip. I'll give you a final hot take, though. One of the greatest cheaters of all time in the history of baseball is the commissioner's office, is baseball itself, for putting juiced balls into play starting in 1920 and allowing for juiced players in the late 90s.
Right. Oh, well, that's for certain.
They are facilitating these things. So... Yes. All right, so as we come into home, what are you most looking forward to as games start up next week?
I am looking. I saw today. I saw Justin Upton in a Tiger uniform, and I'm just waiting to hear the sounds.
Yeah.
Right now, that's all. I know when I coach, play, whatever. The hearing cleats on asphalt, hearing the.
Oh yeah,
that's what it's all about.
Check out the Sounds of Baseball podcast because we did talk about that. The thwap of the ball going across all the rows of pitchers and catchers.
Yeah. Did we call it a thwap?
I call it a thwap.
Oh, okay.
What do you call it?
I don't know that I
pop?
can say thwap.
A thwap?
I'm not certain.
Yeah, but I do look forward to that. Just the sounds and the smells and the sights of the green grass down in Florida.
It's the aesthetic.
It is the aesthetic. All right. Well, thank you as always to everyone listening in Internet Radio Land and now watching us on our YouTube channel. So, hey. You can find this podcast on runningthebases.com as well as the link to the YouTube channel. Download the podcast on soundcloud.com/runningthebases or on iTunes. So for Coach Bounds, who's right there in case you weren't familiar, I'm Tucker Wells. This has been the Running the Bases podcast. We're coming into home and we're safe. Coach, have a good night.
Good night.